Hi guys, welcome to Learning Electronics Repair. I published a video recently where I was looking at different methods to clean the solder from holes after we'd removed capacitors from a motherboard. So I manually removed the capacitors. I'll just show you briefly on this video how I did it, and then I tried various methods to clean the solder out of the holes after the components had been removed. So I tried solder braid. I tried this manual solder pump. I tried two electric solder pumps, you can see them here, and I tried my desoldering station. I'll link the video from this one. Two of the devices basically came out on top in my opinion. I mentioned which ones they were. I also tried desoldering needles as well, both solid ones and hollow ones. Now, somebody commented that the solid desoldering needles were not meant for cleaning holes on motherboards. They said they were for cleaning nozzles on welders or something like that, something not related, or carburetors. So the first thing I just want to mention is that those solid soldering needles are sold on AliExpress and other places as desoldering needles. I'll just show you. Here they are, both the solid and hollow ones which I tried. The solid ones which caused the controversy are these. And we can see quite clearly these are electronic circuit through hole needle desoldering welding repair tools. So these are repair tools for cleaning holes on motherboards. Maybe they have other uses as well, but they're certainly not sold for any other use. So anything else you do with these needles is basically just appropriating the tool for something else, whether it be carburetors, welding tools, or whatever. So those are the desoldering needles that I tried. Amongst the other comments, apart from the desoldering needles, which we just talked about, is the fact that I was making a rather unfair comparison, because these tools in particular are designed to desolder components, not to remove the solder from the holes after the component has been removed. And the comment was basically that the tip of the tool uses the leg of the component to suck the solder through, or rather to melt the solder all the way through the hole. So when you trigger it to suck the solder out, it's all molten. I'm not sure about that personally, in my opinion, and I learned a long time ago that the easiest way to unsolder components was to take them out of the board first and then clean the holes. Certainly things like capacitors, but let's prove it one way or the other. I'm open to suggestion, guys. So for those of you who felt I was misusing these, you didn't particularly mention about this one, but maybe it's the same, and the other tools, let's try to unsolder some capacitors with them still on the board and see if we can do that. I'm going to use the same sort of PCB I used before, which was a motherboard, because to be fair, that's what I used before and we should compare like for like. So let's have a look at the boards we're going to use. Here is a motherboard similar to the last one we used, and previously I was desoldering the capacitors which are on the V core of the CPU. I chose these ones because these are the ones you normally want to change when you're recapping a motherboard, although they're usually that type, okay? And they're also, in my opinion, quite difficult to desolder. So let's unsolder one first, the method I normally use, and then we can try the various other capacitors. If I run out of capacitors, I have some more motherboards we can use. So we'll go with this capacitor. And I'll show you the way that I normally do. I think this is the easiest way, but obviously everybody has their own methods. This is the way that works for me. I have my soldering iron set at 380 degrees. So I'm going to add solder to either end of the capacitor. 2 pins, okay. I'm going to get my finger behind the capacitor here, heat up the solder on the leg furthest away and effectively rock the capacitor in that direction. So we're going to melt that one and pull on the capacitor. What we can see now is that the capacitor is lifted at this end. I'm now going to push it in the opposite direction and warm the opposite pin. So in this case, it's going to be this one. Okay. And if we look again, the capacitor is now lifted at that end. I'm going to go back to the first end, and after a couple times the capacitor will come out. There. Okay, so there's our capacitor. It's removed nice and cleanly, the legs are clean, and of course we have solder in the holes. I tried various ways to do this. One of the ways it worked quite well was the little handheld solder sucker, so we'll use it. Okay, I'm going to warm the solder up on the pad and I'm going to try and suck it through. Now it's done the job. Somebody told me it actually works better if we put the desoldering tool on the opposite side of the board and we heat the solder from the other side. So let's try that. I'm not sure I can get this into camera shot very well, but I'll try. So we put the soldering iron over the hole on this side of the board. I'll just try and get it. I find it a bit fiddly, but it's a new technique for me. We'll melt the solder from the other side. Let's see. That's here. Did it desolder? Well, no it didn't. I'll zoom down. You can see there the hole that I have desoldered. I'll get my torch, we can shine a light through it, you can see. Okay, you can clearly see the hole, yeah. And the other one didn't desolder. Let me try from the other side, which is my normal method. So with my method, I will add some fresh solder. Okay, I'll get the desoldering tool ready. Hold it next door very close to the hole. Heat up the solder and suck. And this is what was happening before on the previous demonstration. So effectively, it removes the surface solder, but it doesn't remove the solder from all the way down the hole. Okay. Now in the previous video, I find I could make this work by using hot air to heat the area of the board first. So in fact we'll do that. Get it nice and warm, not melting the solder, just getting it nice and warm. I can warm the other side a little bit as well if I want. Okay. Now let's try and desolder it. And it didn't work again. Try again. And this time I actually got it, okay? So you can clearly see the holes are desoldered. They're both actually desoldered. I just shine one from a different angle through the other one. Or it was previously. You know guys, I've now managed to resolder the other one. I'm not quite sure I've got any solder on there, but I have. Okay. Now I have them both desoldered. You can see it, maybe not totally clear, but it is desoldered. Probably just a bit of flux in there. So that's basically how I was doing it with all the various tools. Now let's see if the viewers who said that that wasn't a fair demonstration are correct. So they're saying that the heating tool actually will desolder all the way through if you leave the component in. So the component leg transfers the heat to the other side. Let's try. So first of all, I'm going to use Braid. So we'll warm up the component with some fresh solder. Okay, I'll put some fresh solder on. This always helps. I will take braid, I will add flux to the braid, and then let's see if we can unsolder the capacitor. Okay, I've put a bit of flux on the board, you can see it there. I'll put some flux on the braid as well. Okay, you can see it there. Now let's see what happens. Can I unsolder the capacitor? Well, I'm certainly wicking solder out of it. Okay, it hasn't cleared it all, but I have removed solder. Let's go again. Okay, let's cut the excess off because that might be sucking heat out from the job. Let's go again. Might be desoldering. Let's try the other side. It's easier to rotate the board actually for me to get at it. Okay. Well, I don't know if there's something wrong with my technique. I've managed to stick the braid to it this time. Yeah, I think I have got it, so maybe it was my technique wasn't very good. Let me come from this side again. I think that's desoldered. I think I can move it. Yeah, okay, go for the other pin. Put some flux on the braid again. Okay, let's try it. Okay. Other side. Once again. And I think once again that leg is actually moving. So they look free. Can we remove the capacitor? Let's try. Here is the capacitor. This is quite warm, a bit too warm to hold. Will it come out? It's rocking backwards and forwards. I think it will come out. Okay, yes. So braid will desolder the capacitor, okay, with flux added. So that is a yes, you can do it that way. This actually is not particularly warm. I can hold it quite easily. It came out clearly. Whether that was any easier or better than the technique of removing the component first, I'm not sure. Personally, I think that was the easier way. But hey, they both worked, okay? So braid, yes. Now let's try the manual solder sucker. We have another nice row of capacitors here on the same power plane. Once again, I'll add some fresh solder. This always makes it easier. Okay, fresh solder, fresh solder. We'll try the solder sucker, okay? So, get some heat into it, warm it up. And it's sucked solder away from it, but it hasn't actually cleared the solder in the hole. I'm fairly sure you can clearly see that. Let's go again. So we'll add a bit of fresh solder so the heat can conduct in there. We'll leave it a little bit longer. And again, it's removing solder. I won't add any more this time. I'll just actually put that over the leg and we try. Well, it looks like it's clear on one side. once again. But it's not easier. It's not working better than it did when I removed the component first. In fact, it's not now desoldering. Push it over there again. I'll move the iron out of the way. Yeah, not doing the job, guys. Try the other leg. See if that has any more luck, okay? This one. No. 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 So unless there's something badly wrong with my technique, the solder sucker will not do it. If anybody's got a better technique, we can try it again. I'm always happy to make follow-up videos. But what I will try is using hot air to warm the area, then see if the solder sucker will do it. Okay, so I'll put some fresh solder. Shall we add some flux? Because I didn't add flux, and maybe somebody's going to say, Rich, you should have added flux. So let's try it actually before we put the hot air. So we will add flux like we did with the braid. Now let's try, see if it will remove it, okay? Here we go. I'm not quite sure how long I should hold that on there. I would have thought that would have heated it right through by now. Okay. It removed solder, but it didn't desolder the leg. But you can clearly see that it's still soldered. You're not going to remove that capacitor. Try this one. No. So you can see the handheld suction tool works fine when the component is not in. It will clear the holes, but not while it is in there. So the idea of the legs transferring the heat through the board appears not to be correct, or it doesn't help. Either if it is, maybe it's correct, it just doesn't help. Let's try warming this up. Let's see if this helps. Just getting plenty of heat into the area. That's why I'm waggling the hot air back and forwards, just heating the entire general area. Okay. Right. Now let's see. Soldering iron, solder sucker. Well, it seems to get one side. Oh, he's got half of it, okay. Possibly have some progress. Let me heat it from the other side. Okay. Can we do it? Missed that time. Okay. Will this help? No. Maybe just a little bit better than it was before, but no. 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 So guys, that failed. If anybody knows how to make this, do that. Apart from what I always did before, which was take the components out first. Let me know and we'll try it. Okay, but for me, that failed. Let's look at the electric desoldering tools. This one was quite inexpensive. It was about €5.50. So here we have a heated element like a soldering iron, but with a hollow tip in the end. And we have a plunger. So like the manual one, we press the plunger and then hit the release. And that sucks the solder away from the hole, or rather the component leg. So when I was using this with the holes, somebody said that's definitely not intended for that. as we discussed. So let's try it. First of all, I'll just check it's up to temperature. I can melt solder with it. Let's go to a fresh one because we've been messing around with that previous capacitor. Let's give it a fresh start. Okay, we will go with this one. I'm going to add some fresh leaded solder again. I can just get some to melt a little bit. Okay. Okay. Just get rid of that little blob. There we go. I'll add a little bit of flux as well. It always seems to help. Okay. Now, let's see if this thing can desolder this. So, I'll try to hold it at an angle where you can see what we're doing. Where's the capacitor? There. Okay, so we'll come onto the joint and then we melt the solder. We waggle it around a little bit, let the leg transfer the heat through the board and hit the trigger. Well, it's removed solder, but it hasn't desoldered the hole. Okay, let's go for the other pin. So same thing again. I'm on the leg, waggle it around a little bit, hit the trigger. And it's done the same. It's removed some solder, but it hasn't desoldered the component. Let's try again. I won't add more solder this time, but let's try it. So we have this pin. Waggle it about. And it didn't desolder. Go to the other one. Waggle it about a bit. Didn't desolder. So this tool cannot unsolder this component. I'll just try and straighten the leg up a little bit. Not easy. Okay. In fact, I'm not even sure this is melting the solder. That solder doesn't look like it's molten to me. Let's try. Yeah, can you see that this soldering iron cannot actually even melt the solder? Look. Okay. It will not melt. I'll try some leaded solder on it again. Okay, so while that is connecting to there, can I even melt the solder? Yes, I can. So we have some solder. Sorry about this, guys. So we have some solder on there, okay? Will it melt now? Can you see, guys? It will melt the solder. Okay, we'll give it 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Desolder. No. Let's try again with hot air. So we'll just warm up the area. And then we'll see if it'll work. If you didn't watch part 1, then you should watch it. It was a very interesting video. But what we did find that all of the tools would do the job if we remove the component first and then if we warm the area with hot air. Okay, so we'll now give that quite a good warm. Okay. Okay. Right, let's try. I'll put a bit of fresh solder because this always does help. It looks like the tool can now melt the solder. Yeah, it's melting it. Right. Let's try to remove it. Give it a swirl around a little bit. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And it made a better attempt, but it did not desolder. Go for the other one. Push the plunger in, I need to do that. Okay. Push. No guys, it can't do the job. I think that's because this has a 35 watt heating element, it just isn't powerful enough to melt the solder basically. We can try using that tool with a soldering iron simultaneously to see if that will do it. So fresh solder. Fresh solder, okay. Take our desoldering tool. Okay. And we'll come in with both together. So soldering iron. I'm going to warm it up and then effectively lean this over onto the thing. And that got it. Okay, that got it, you can see. Well, I soldered it back in again, but it got it. Let's go again. So, soldering iron, warm it. Press the button, I hadn't armed it again. Okay, let's go. Soldering iron is melting it. Bring this over. That time it didn't get it. Try the other one. That's melted it. Desoldering tool. Yeah, that got it. I think. This one. Once more. Got it. I'm trying to move it away, but there's enough residual solder to stick it back into position again. Try and remove it. Now it's soldered. So it's kind of trying to do it, but maybe this technique is not a good one. I'm not sure. But it's almost, but no cigar, guys. Okay, I can melt the solder. I can put this onto it. I can heat it with the soldering iron at the same time. I can waggle it around. But no. So somebody suggested in the comments on the previous video that you could modify these by replacing the plunger with a vacuum tube, basically a silicone tube to a vacuum pump. Probably trigger that with a foot pedal or something, and then you can make this work like a $200 desoldering gun. I dispute that. This does not have sufficient power on its own to even melt the solder. Yeah, so how's it going to work? How's it going to desolder when the solder is solid? Okay. Having said that, I will try and modify this, or rather Carlos will actually, on Retro Upgrade or the new electronics channel which we'll have running this month. So we will modify it, but personally I think it needs to have a much higher wattage element as well. Now we'll try this tool. You can see there's a hole in the end of it. It comes with different tips actually. And this is also a vacuum desoldering pump, but on this you've actually press the button to trigger it. Okay. Let's see if this can do it. Once again, I'll go for a fresh capacitor. So we will add some flux and some solder. Okay. A little bit more. Okay. Once again, we'll just make sure it's hot enough to melt solder. Yes. So with this one, same sort of technique. We get over the leg. It fits nicely in the nozzle. We waggle it around a bit. Press the button. Remove it. and it didn't melt the solder, or it didn't remove it. Okay, try the other one. Maybe I'm not holding it long enough, guys. Again, you guys who say these really work well, tell me if I'm doing the wrong technique. I'm waggling it around. I'm on there quite a while. Press the button, and it didn't remove the solder. Let's try adding some hot air. Okay, that should be quite warm now. Again, we can just add a bit of fresh solder. It's melting very quickly, you can see that. Okay, let's try it again. So, soldering iron onto the leg, fits into the nozzle, waggle it about, it's going easily. That is desoldered, I think. Okay, let's just try the other one. Here. Same technique, waggle it around a bit. You can see the one's moving. It fell out of the board. Let's see if we can remove the solder from the hole. No, but the capacitor came out. Yeah, it's actually dropped out of the board itself. Just try again to clean that hole. Well, it's removed the capacitor, so obviously this thing about it melting the hole through with the leg obviously appears to be the case with that one. There is our capacitor. A bit warm, but it's there. I can actually hold it so it's not too hot. So that worked. It's struggling to clean the hole afterwards, but it did work. Let's try the last tool. You can see my desoldering station is warming up. I have it set at 399. While it's doing that, let's add some fresh solder again onto the capacitor. I will add flux the same as I did on the other ones, but normally I don't use it with this one because it tends to clog it up a little bit, but we will do a like for like test. So there is some flux. Okay. Okay, it's up to temperature now, so I don't need to test if it will melt solder. We can see the temperature on the readout. Let's see how this one does it. So over the leg, I'll just waggle it around a little bit, give it a few seconds and press the trigger. And that didn't quite unsolder it. Let's go again with the other one. Okay, it's moving around. That is unsoldered. Let's go back to the first one again. Okay. We see the components moving now, and it's going to fall out of the board. You can see that, yeah? Let's just take this out. So here is our capacitor. Yeah, just came out. So you can see that this tool, the SS331, is the only one that managed to do that without additional hot air. The other two that could do it were the blue solder sucker and the Braid. Let's compare them again. This one then was not up to the job. Even having hot air as well, it could not remove the solder from the legs of the component. It would not desolder the component. Just simply could not do it unless there was something badly wrong with my technique, in which case comments below. Braid, Well, I use the Chemtronics braid, size 4, 8045 from AliExpress. I don't know if it's original or fake, but it certainly works very well. Cost me about 20 odd euros for a pack of 10 rolls. And this did the job. This was up to the job. It didn't even need the addition of hot air. After a few attempts, I could actually unsolder the component and it literally fell out of the board. So that one was a success. This one was a failure. Even with hot air, it couldn't do the job. When I had my soldering iron pressing against the tip as well as this, it could actually then melt the solder. On its own, it couldn't even melt the solder. But it was kind of close, but no cigar. It almost did it with my soldering iron helping it, but it didn't really do it. So that one, failure. Having the component in the place did not help. This works better sucking out the holes after the component was removed on part 1. I don't see how modifying this with a vacuum pump is going to help if it can't actually melt the solder. But we can try, okay? So with Carlos from Retro Upgrade, we're going to have a play with that. He is more the maker, and let's see what we can do with it, and then we can try, and we'll see once and for all whether a modified one of these is up to the job or whether it still can't melt the solder. Personally, I would say without putting a higher rated heating element in, it ain't going to melt the solder no matter what you're using to suck it out with, okay? So I think failure. This one on its own could not desolder the capacitor. It would not melt it through. It was struggling to melt the solder. With the addition of hot air, this actually worked pretty well. So whereas this failed pretty much on the first test, when we have the through leg, it was helping to transfer the heat through, as some viewers said, and this definitely worked better. But it only works with the addition of hot air. This one, clear winner this time, apart from the braid. This was the only tool that could desolder the component, the capacitor, without using hot air to preheat the board. So the results this time, the clear winners were that one and that one. Personally, I don't think there was a great deal of comparison really. This did it much easier than that, but they both did do the job. So credit where credit's due. That one, if you can afford it, once again, that's 2 out of 2 is the tool to use. If not, in this case, rather than the manual solder sucker, it was that one. That was the budget option that worked the best. Okay, hope you enjoyed that one. I hope it answered some questions and comments, but I'm sure there'll be plenty more this time. Again, down there below, let me know. And if we have to do some more comparisons, well, we can have a part 3. Hope you enjoyed that, guys, and I look forward to seeing you all soon again on another Learn Electronics Repair video. Ciao for now.